Hello, I'm Chris Hartwell, and welcome to The Heartbeat, the place where I talk about just a few of the things that make this little guy tick. Today, I'm going to be talking about Tim Miller's Deadpool. Join me, won't you? Yes, my voice is shot. I apologize. Let's do this anyways. So, this film is set, theoretically anyways, in Fox's X-Men cinematic universe, and in it we meet Wade Wilson, who is an ex-special operative turned mercenary, whose lightning-fast wit and charm win the heart of Vanessa. Unfortunately, their very passionate relationship hits what would be life-ending snag when Wilson is diagnosed with cancer. Just in the nick of time, before Ryan Reynolds' charm can be snuffed out, along comes the scientist Ajax, who not only promises to cure Wilson, but also to make him super. And though he does live up to his promise, he also failed to elaborate that he intends to make him a super slave versus super hero. So, Wade Wilson adopts the alias Deadpool and exacts his revenge. Now, guys, I really am kind of struggling to articulate how I actually feel about this film, and ultimately what rating I should give it. So I think I'm just going to start talking and see where I end up. Now, to kick things off, though, there are a number of elements that I can, without reservation, praise in this film. First and foremost, I really found that the screenplay from both Rhett, Reese, and Paul Wernick was refreshingly focused, cohesive, and self-contained for a superhero film. It knew what it wanted to be, what it was about, who its central characters were, and it got it done. And as someone who has never read a single Deadpool comic in his life, I can happily report that this film was not just a series of events that the writers assumed I would care about because I was already a fan. Now, before you click away and discount all that I'm about to say because of my lack of Deadpool knowledge, consider this. What if a film's first and foremost priority was to be a good film? One that stood on its own 2 feet and drew me in all by itself. One that enabled me to enjoy the film even if I didn't know who the lead character was, why he needed to wear that specific red suit, or have that unique ability to break the fourth wall. And what I saw with Tim Miller's Deadpool was neither a film that was being forced to be beholden to what had come before, nor forced to rush to set up some sort of future franchise, but rather like my favorite adaptations from Lord of the Rings to Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, it charged forwards like it was the only and first iteration of this story, with everything to prove, but everything to gain. And actually, it was interesting. I was having kind of a fun conversation with a friend of mine who was kind of ripping on DC for having, until now, failed to really establish some sort of interconnecting cinematic and television universe like Marvel has. And though DC has done a lot of things poorly, in my opinion, that is not the chiefest of their sins. And I also should say, I do enjoy a lot about an interconnected cinematic universe, just in the fact that it allows me to invest in these characters all the more, because I know they'll continue film after film. And on top of that, for me, it really does allow the lesser films, kind of like a filler episode on an ongoing television series, to just be shrugged off just a little bit easier, because at least I know they're playing into a larger whole that I am still enjoying. Though, now that I have said that, I do realize how lame it is that I need to view these massive summer blockbusters in this way. I should not have to excuse them by comparing their eh-ness to television episodes, but unfortunately I think there is this mindset of those behind the camera that because the whole is more important than making the individual parts feel whole, they can essentially write these less than satisfying mega-budget television episodes, which is exactly why Captain America: The First Avengers' second half was more or less just one long montage designed to sprint to the Avengers instead of provide a satisfying end to that film. Also, in addition to having no idea what it wanted to be, what its central conflict was, or what it was trying to say, an interconnected universe did nothing to help X-Men Origins Wolverine and its use of characters. And no, I am not about to shake my fist and say, how dare they not put Deadpool in that iconic red suit, or the reason that character didn't work was because they sewed up the mouth of the merc with the mouth. Even though that was stupid, that's not the main issue. The main problem with that character is he sprung up at the last second in that final act there, just to be utilized as every other mutant had been utilized in that film, which was just basically fan service or some sort of clever setup for the future X-Men films. And therefore, I am so happy, so very happy to report that that wasn't the case with Deadpool. There was such a leanness in the cast of mutants in this film, which was actually quite humorously pointed out in the film at one point. And whether they were arbitrarily chosen to begin with or not, both Colossus and Negasonic Teenage Warhead were really utilized well as fitting foils to the title character. Something else that I was so very pleased to see in this film was really clear, passionate direction. Because, unfortunately, prior to seeing Deadpool, I took some time and watched another of Ryan Reynolds' superhero films, and with The Green Lantern, there was just such a lack of interest in that story from behind the camera. Nearly every scene of that film just felt like the lame version of scenes I had seen in some other superhero film. There was just no heart, there was no spark, and there was no ingenuity. And with Deadpool, prior to seeing the film anyways, I did have a fear that the same fate might befall it when I heard that some guy named Tim Miller was directing. Not only was this his first feature film, but it was also a project he'd been fighting to get off the ground for a number of years, which did make me question, will this simply be a fanboy rant like Alien vs. Predator Requiem, or could it be a passion project from a genuine artist that actually had something to say? Fortunately, I did find it much more to be the latter, especially in that opening action sequence, which ended up running throughout the whole first half of the film, really keeping the necessary, more expository backstory from bogging down the pace. It was just so very clear that that sequence had been worked through backwards and forwards, and actually the way the camera flowed with the seamless editing and just the visual gags was reminiscent anyways of some of Edgar Wright's brilliance, which actually does make sense considering that Tim Miller acted as a creative consultant for the VFX on Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. And to go back to X-Men Origins and Green Lantern for a moment, I will give them this. They did cast an extremely watchable, extremely charismatic actor in Ryan Reynolds, who threw himself into those parts far more than either of those films deserved. And here again on Deadpool, the man's commitment to getting this part right was just palpable. Though I honestly probably could have told you that, having just seen the number of promotional ads and trailers in which he involved himself. But also on the film, he did bring just a great level of believability in combining this man who was both a million jokes a minute as well as this deadly capable mercenary. As per the humor on this film, which really is non-stop, front to back, and does seem to be getting kind of universal praise from everyone out there, for me anyways, it ranged from genuinely clever to enjoyably quirky, to sometimes a little bit obvious, to sometimes just eye-rollingly crass. And when it comes to humor, it really is difficult to judge because it really is so subjective. Some people think Airplane and Monty Python and the Holy Grail are genius, while others just think they're stupid. I will say, however, like a Will Ferrell movie like Anchorman, Talladega Nights, or Step Brothers, the stuff that actually I find the most genius and the most inspired is when Will Ferrell is pushed to come up with things like Great Beard of Zeus, or busts out some crazy flute solo, versus just being able to rattle off a bunch of poop, fart, and sex jokes and busting out something else. So was I rolling on the floor from start to finish in Deadpool? No. Were there other moments where I was genuinely laughing, like when Wade Wilson hypothesized where the villain got his alias? Yes. I also did find it just a little bit humorous that this film, which is being praised as the anti-superhero film, when it did make jabs at other superhero films, they were just a little on the easy, obvious side, as well as besides a hard R rating, which allowed for some extreme violence and vulgarity and kind of this unique love story, I guess. Beyond those things, it did have a lot more in common with other superhero films than I think it would like to admit, which isn't a knock in my book. I do love superhero films, but I thought it was worth pointing out. Now, I really did want to avoid talking about that hard R, but after watching a dad sit through this entire film with his 9 and 11-year-old-ish son, Now, I get it. We all have to make that judgment call. Was the content in Deadpool too extreme? Well, for me personally, it does depress me just a little bit the way that the filmmakers are handling the violence, the sexuality, and the vulgarity in this film, and how most audiences seem to be receiving it. And I get it, and I too make that excuse of, it's just a movie, it's only entertainment, chill out. But that's actually exactly where the danger lies, because when I'm believing that, my defenses are down. And that's when the message of the film, whether it be direct or indirect, actually starts to seep in and influence and affect me. Now, ironically, I do think that Deadpool, the film itself, actually kind of disagrees with me, where in one scene it both acknowledges and dismisses what I've just been talking about by having this taxi driver character, in a rather hyperbolic sense, take Deadpool's advice by doing something specific to woo the affections of a woman. And I can just hear the filmmakers in that scene going, you see, no one would actually do this like this taxi driver did. Not in the real world, come on. But that's not the point that I'm trying to make. I'm not concerned that watching Deadpool is going to turn me into a killer, but rather that it will diminish in my heart and my mind the weight which real death, real killing, real racism, real sexism, and every other kind of brokenness that this film thinks it's so cool for taken lightly has. So, in the end, with all that said, I will give Deadpool a 3.5 out of 5. A lot of solid craft, especially compared to many of the other modern superhero films, but still, take that hard R seriously, guys. Go in cautious. I would still love to know what you guys think, though, so please comment below. Did you love the film? Did you hate it? What worked? What didn't? Do you think this will ever actually tie in to the other larger X-Men cinematic universe? Comment below and let me know. Also, please do subscribe. I'm going to continue to review films and television on this channel, and I would love for you all to stay up to date on all of those things. Thank you for putting up with my voice. But for now, I'm Chris Hartwell. This is The Heartbeat. Thank you for joining me.